Well, for more on what's behind China's power cuts and how they're affecting factory production, joining us now is Thomas Gehl. He's president of ChildWise International and was an advisor to former U.S. President Bill Clinton on environmental issues. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you very much.
So first, explain to our viewers the factors that really led up to these parts of China having to ration their energy.
Well, I think the main problem is that none of the power generation facilities have reached peak capacity. So they're artificially withholding energy generation capacity to save money because the price of coal has gone too much. So at any time, they could flip the switch and generate 10 to 20% more power. China has increased their energy generation capabilities by 10% this year alone. So there is plenty of energy to go around, but they're intentionally, as the last speaker talked about, rationing it because of the coal prices.
So talk about the parts of China being impacted the most and why these areas.
Well, the northern areas have traditionally been impacted by this, particularly when we come into the winter region. About 6 or 7 years ago, President Xi had a very concerted effort to reduce coal utilization throughout China. Or maybe it was just 5 years ago. And the northern area, they tried to cut the coal generation, but it was too much too soon. And a lot of people went without heat for a couple of weeks at a time. So they had to reverse that policy and get it going. But it's a diffuse area. So the transmission lines have to cover a lot of different area. And on transmission lines, you're always losing electrical ability as you go through. As they said before, they're looking at alternate means to be able to supplement the power. I expect that there are several nuclear power plants going online in that region, but they won't come online till after 2030.
And you've talked about a couple of options there. So what is the government doing right now to try and ease this energy crunch?
I think that they are trying to ration some of the power to the larger consuming powers. So ceramic power, some of the iron mills, they've told them that they must cut back on their production during this time, which I think is a good idea. I think that they're going in. I personally think that during the crisis, the government should augment the cost of the coal and give some preferential treatment to the power companies and give some sort of a rebate to them so that they can bring in the coal at the price that they predicted and ramp up the generation capacity. There is no grid in China that is operating at maximum capacity right now, and so that can change overnight.
And we have seen that Goldman Sachs and other investment banks are forecasting reduced economic growth because of this. How big of a problem is this for factories in affected areas and the sort of domino effect for other countries that are relying on these factories?
No, will absolutely be very impactful on it. The GDP was reduced from 8.2 to 7.8, so 0.4 decrease. These areas that we talked about will be disproportionately affected by that. And then it disrupts the entire supply chain, which has already been critically injured during the pandemic. So this is really the worst time for China and the world to have these issues because we need to restore things to our new normal as quickly as possible.
And as you mentioned, this intersection of sort of managing these coal prices and then, of course, the greening of China's energy sector all coming together at the same time. How do you see this playing out in the short to longer term?
Well, I think it's very unfortunate for the ecological environment because China is a little behind in moving out of coal. They're the largest importers of coal in the world. China uses more coal than the next top 6 developed countries combined. So that is something that needs to be addressed and is being addressed, but the answer in China appears to be nuclear power, and that takes a while to build. So China is now slated to peak on their carbon emission by 2030. But in this interim time, China will build as much power generating capacity added on to their generating capacity than all of the coal generating plants in the United States. So that's putting a major burden on the greenhouse gases that are coming out. After that, it will reverse. I know China is very dedicated to the to the policy, but it's difficult to see how to move the ball forward when they're hitting a very difficult objective right now.
And do we have any idea of a timeline as to when it'll get to the point where it can offset what it's been getting with coal-fired energy?
Well, again, the idea is for China to be carbon neutral by 2060. Most of the rest of the world, Europe, the United States, have said they will be carbon neutral by 2050. I think that China, everything I've seen and everything I predicted is that China can do things in half the time that other countries can once they decide to do it. President Xi has great power to move forward and has done so on many environmental issues. So I have hope that they can speed up the transition to both renewables as well as nuclear and take coal out of the equation. That's really the most difficult problem and really hurting us, as we can see with the climate change impacts around the world, in China and around the world. So we really need to curtail that as quickly as possible.
Indeed. Well, we do appreciate your insights. Thomas Gehl there, President of ChildWise International.
Thank you so much. Have a nice night.